This session is being recorded. I just turned the record button on. So we'll be able to have folks who are not able to attend today take a look and see what we have done. So just one more reminder that this is the session 1 of a 3-part series, Defining Open Educational Resources, and this is sort of the basics of it. And I need to sort of get a lay of the land from you. There's a bunch of tools and collections that will be discussed today. So just give me a sense for which ones you are familiar with. We will have a follow-up question which will ask which ones you are actually using. So we're going to get a sense of ones you know about and ones that you are actually using. So I'm going to give you a few moments to do that because we don't want to take the precious time we have because we have a lot of content that we're going to cover. And I will wait for you to do this. Okay. We have about 3/4 of you voted. I'll give you another moment to have the others in there. So I'm going to close the poll and share it with you. So we have interesting numbers. Creative Commons, MERLOT, and SoftChalk, about 2/3 of our audience know about those, and about 1/3 know about connections in college open textbooks. Interesting. And I'm seeing a few comments in the Q&A. In fact, let me move a little further along here and talk a little bit about this presentation. Most of you are muted. Only the presenters actually have their mics open because we have 350 people who signed up for today's presentation, and we just don't have enough. There'll be too much background noise. But let me do say that one of the things we want you to do is become active today, and that is by asking questions in the Q&A box, which looks something like this. I'll be monitoring that along with Mitchell Levy, and I'll introduce him in a moment along with the rest. And we'll take a look, and we'll probably wait till the end, but we may interrupt if it's a kind of a timely question when your questions come in. Now, this panel may be in your way, so you can click here and move it out of the way. Then you can click there again in order to make it it's viewable, and you can then go to the Q&A box. One more poll. I promised you the one more poll, and this is what tools or collections do you use as opposed to what you are familiar with. And as we get there, I will introduce today's presenters and give you kind of a brief overview of how we're going to move today's session along, and then we'll get started. Give another moment. We've got about 70% voting. So let's get at least a 75, which is what we had a moment ago, so we can see what people are like and what people are using. Okay, I am closing the poll, and I will share it. And these numbers are a bit different. So we got a lot of folks from SoftChalk to come today. A lot of folks are using Creative Commons in their licensing. And the numbers go down for MERLOT and Connections and College Open Textbooks. But I think after today in the series, you will know a great deal more about them and what they're about. Today's presentation is going to be, there's going to be a beginning part, a middle, and an end. The beginning part is going to be an interview that Mitchell Levy from Open Doors and Happy About will interview Catherine Casserly, who is Director of Creative Commons. The middle section will be brief descriptions of various collections. Kathy Swift will describe MERLOT, Daniel Williamson, Connections, Jackie Hood, College Open Textbooks, and finally I'll do a brief description of SoftChalk and SoftChalk Connect. These will be 5-minute quick overviews, and we will go more in depth as our session goes on. So if I can, I would like to get this started and go from there. Jackie, if I see that you're on there, if you could type in your PIN number so that we can control your microphone, that would be great, because you've called in but you haven't entered your PIN number yet. So that would make it easier for me to manage and make sure that we can hear you when it's time for you to come on. All right, so I'm going to...
Where do I enter it?
Who is speaking?
This is Jackie. Where do I put the PIN number, or do I put it on the phone?
The PIN number would be a part of your audio panel. And
yeah, I see the number, but where do I type it?
You hit the pound, the PIN number, and pound again.
On the key, on the telephone. Okay, I
Yes.
get it. Sorry.
That didn't quite work. Pound your PIN number and pound again.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. So I'm going to move quickly to get this started and turn this over to Kathy and Mitchell.
Great, thank you. So Kathy, why don't you, we're using your slides, so Steve, why don't you make sure Kathy has access to drive the slide presentation.
Well, there she is.
Okay, perfect. And this is Mitchell Levy. The company is happy about, and we were running the marketing for College Open Textbooks. And you'll hear more about College Open Textbooks from Jackie Hood later in the presentation. And this was a 3-year grant from the Hewlett Foundation, and we are now at the end of the grant. And a lot of the grantees have gotten together and created a new entity called Open Doors, and that's opendoorsgroup.org. And we are putting proposals together for other activities and other things to do, and are still actively involved with OER and help pull together some of the content for this. And I'm very excited to have Kathy Casserly present on what is, the who's, what's, and whys of OER. And Kathy, why don't we start off with just a real quick thing of who are you?
Who am I? Thank you, Mitchell, and thank you, SoftChalk, for the opportunity to present to this group today. My name is Kathy Casserly. I'm the CEO of Creative Commons. I am now realized I'm 5 months into my new role here at Creative Commons, but I have a long history in open educational resources extending from my days at the Hewlett Foundation, where I worked as a program officer with Mike Smith at the very beginning of trying to seed the field of open educational resources. I was there for over 8 years and had the opportunity to fund and participate and help develop many of the projects that form the core in many ways of some of the anchor grants in open educational resources. We now obviously have had tremendous spread in growth and movement in the field and many new innovations which have been fascinating to track and to be part of. I moved from Hewlett Foundation to the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. I was there for 2 years as a Vice President of Innovation and Open Learning, and really thinking about how to integrate open educational resources with their particular work in the development math area of community colleges. But kind of for the core for me and the passion for me has always been the licensing. Creative Commons and open licensing powers. OER is an expression that's sometimes used here around Creative Commons, and so it's really the foundation on which the open movement is built. And so it's just been a great opportunity for me now to change hats and to become the CEO of Creative Commons and have a chance to speak with you both about OER, what it is, why it's important, and how I think we can collectively have a significant impact.
Beautiful, great, unbelievable background for this session, and certainly for what you're doing in helping to steer, and we really appreciate your participation in making this happen. So now let's talk about what is OER, just for those just to bring everyone up to speed.
So it was great seeing the polls. I think that's a great tool that you have at the beginning, and I was happy. My heart had a happy beat when I saw that there was certainly strong knowledge of Creative Commons and some use of the Creative Commons license. But to begin is, what is open educational resources? Well, open educational resources is really tools to improve teaching and learning, and very important as we move. Sorry, let me back here, it's really about having the resources to improve the teaching and learning. Open educational resources are video, materials, courseware, lectures, learning objects, videos that individuals and users can create, teachers can use, students can use, and they can distribute, redistribute, and repurpose for purposes of teaching and learning. So it's really a key element of the open educational resources, kind of distinct from perhaps just e-learning in general, is that we have this ability to repurpose. We know how we can use the educational asset, whatever it is, and we can share it with the world in different ways and continue to innovate on it and continue to kind of disseminate knowledge with that core tool.
Nice. So why, this sounds exciting, and obviously being actively involved with it, we're seeing the growth in popularity and the growth in use, and there's a lot of VC fund as well as grant, private and public funds being put towards OER. Can you talk about why it's growing in popularity so quickly?
So I think part of why it's growing, you had helped kind of structure this, is because we now have a core of activity and we have a collective evidence of impact. So in many ways, in the early parts of a movement, you seed ideas and see if there's traction. You see if there's a take-up. You create a supply, but there has to be a demand pull. It has to be useful for the end users. And quickly, in kind of getting to the idea about impact and why there's both private and public interest in this, is there are some really significant wins in the open educational resource space, some of which are participating in this panel today. Connections, very much a grassroots organization, started in 1999. Frustration with the textbooks and being able to actually keep textbooks up to date, and how we in the digital age are able to take assets and refine them and continue to improve them over time. 2001 was an important piece with MIT OpenCourseWare. It was an important project because it unlocked the knowledge which typically is held behind the walled gates of a premier institution, and said, we are willing to share this with the greater public. It's part of our mission of our organization. And certainly more important than MIT, or partially certainly because of MIT, there are now over 200 institutions across the world, across languages and nationality, who have unlocked the gates to their knowledge as well, and saying that it's important to share this with the broader community. Wikipedia is an example, again, changing the nature of how we think about how knowledge is held and distributed. With this digital age, we now have the opportunity to distribute it in much more efficient and effective ways than previously. So how do we create these learning objects like we do in a Wikipedia article? Creative Commons began to see the bridge and the gap between the legal and the intellectual and the copyright issues, and dissemination and what creators wanted to do with their works of art. And so we kind of stepped in to build this bridge, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But other pieces that have been important in the movement have been Creative Carnegie Mellon, and this is a particularly important project because they use the open participatory web, and they use the data that can be collected with the footprint of students moving through courses to continually refine and improve that course to improve student learning. So we now have a way to open the back door on the data to collect assessment continually, and to be able to do that in a refined way so that we can improve the teaching and learning tools that we share with our broader audiences. There's also strong take-up throughout the world. I just note UNESCO here. Again, the impact that this can have on the developing world and what the developing world can share back with us. This isn't just a one-way share, it's certainly bilateral. One of the most successful projects has been teacher education in sub-Saharan Africa, which is a true collaborative project among 9 nations, 4 languages. Content is distributed digitally as well as print, because in the sub-Saharan Africa, access to the internet is difficult. So again, we've been able to innovate with this platform and with open educational resources to think about things differently. Probably all of us know Khan Academy, which started in 2006 and is now one of the most popular education websites that students are going to in droves. 2008, again, just focusing on the OpenCourseWare Consortium and the broad expanse as well. Flat world knowledge is important because, like you indicated, Mitchell, this is where the previously for-profit commercial entity began to look at how it could harness the potential of open educational resources to not only create a credible distribution, but to begin to think about how there may be other models of publishing, particularly in the textbook realm. And so Flat World Knowledge has been an interesting contributor to the space and a great community partner, because they have brought in another skill set and expertise to actually push us beyond, in some ways, of our educational setting, our traditional ways of looking at the world. 2009, first high school in the nation, which is built completely on open educational resource materials. 2011, a significant event this year, and that the Department of Labor, in putting out $2 billion worth of grants over 4 years, $500 million each year, the first wave of which has already been released, is requiring that any content that gets created, any product of the grant, is required to carry a Creative Commons by license, so that it is therefore required to be an open educational resource, which means it's not locked down and can continue into the future. We also know many of our students use YouTube. They go to YouTube for everything. This is the website of choice for our children. And certainly what we know now is that YouTube, again, is a great dissemination event for Creative Commons. Again, this year they did adopt the Creative Commons license, so anyone who loads a video into YouTube can choose the standard YouTube license, or again, use the Creative Commons license, which then essentially creates an open educational resource. And then last here, I'll just note the Power of Open, which tells the stories in education and culture and science about how open educational resources can be used. Again, how the Creative Commons, the openness and the relicensing and repurposing, some just great stories of impact, which are important as well. So let me stop there and take any questions.
Yeah. But this is the question that everyone could read, but it's really about supply and demand. And in this particular case, we need more supply of open educational resources, but clearly the YouTube, the Khan Academy, there's so many phenomenal things going on in the public companies. We also need more demand, and we need more academics being able to pick up, take, and use. So I guess the question is, on the supply and demand side, why should people be writing open textbooks and OER materials, and why should faculty be using them?
So there are multiple reasons, I think, that we can think about it. And I've kind of created some ideas here, but I'd love to follow up and make sure I'm hitting quite on your question as well as the audience. But let me just hit a few of them. One is we want to reduce transaction costs. When someone creates something, whether it's a teacher who creates a lesson plan, a district that creates a module, a university that creates a research paper or some sort of analysis, they create knowledge, and that knowledge automatically becomes a copyright product. But if someone wants to use that asset in some way, and even if it's put up on websites right now, people think that it's not necessarily under a copyright. We know kids today, for example, who might go in and make collages for school or go on the web and they print and they find interesting photos and they take them, but actually they're breaking copyright. They're actually not supposed to be using those unless they have the permission of the creator. That's what the intellectual property law in this country was created for. And so what's important is that the open educational resources clearly denotes that who has the right to use this asset and how am I, as the creator, giving that right away. And so it's very clear about who can repurpose it, who can use it for what end. And you don't have to track down that individual, go through a lot of time and energy to say, hey, can I use this for a brochure? Or I like this text and I just want to refine it a little bit. Or hey, this is a great algebra lesson plan. Can I use it for my students in this particular community? So one very important piece is we're trying to reduce the transaction costs. Time is a premium. Teachers, students are under tremendous time pressure, and one of the clearest things we need to do is be able to sort through all the information that's available and really identify what we need, the gems, really quickly. Another piece is to reduce redundancy. We have, just in online courses, if we think about it, algebra is pretty much algebra, but across this country we have 50 algebra courses that are unique. We have 50 online algebra courses that are somewhat unique. Some might be better than others. Wouldn't it be great if we could all just pick and choose the elements that we love from each other's and really identify the best course? And it wouldn't have to be that it's locked down, but again, it's modifiable, and that people could pick and choose what they want. So we don't have to continue to create and spend resources at multiple levels, particularly in these tight economic times in the educational systems. We can really refine and use our resources much more efficiently. An important piece is dynamics. The world changes, lessons change, ideas change, the students that we serve change, and so what's really important is that these assets are dynamic. They don't get locked down. They're not calcified. They can continue to evolve and improve over time. And this is really important because we don't need to continually start from scratch. I can use what my colleague has built, I can build on top of it, and then I can share it back with her. And if she likes my improvements, she can use them. If not, she doesn't have to, but someone else, again, down the line might be able to do that. One of the clear challenges we think about, particularly in the education space, is moving to scale. Often we find some really innovative projects and curriculum and ideas, and it's very difficult for what we call these projects and ideas to travel well, to move from one place to another. So when we think about long-term kind of impact and high impact, we have to think about scale beyond the initial project or scope. And while clearly we often have to pilot it with a small group because we don't want to be distributing anything that's not effective and most efficient, is once we know that, though, then how do we build to scale? And if the assets or the content or the knowledge are refined and constrained in some ways, and copyright and intellectual property, we don't have a way to scale once we know it's right. We've got a real gem. How do we share this with the world? So open educational resources provides that avenue for us to be thinking about scale and designing for it from the very beginning. And lastly, it really reduces friction as we think about how content can interoperate, how the world of the web is alive. We often want to pick materials and assets from multiple places, and when we're very clear on what the licensing is, we can actually integrate those spaces together and very quickly, and again, that reduces transaction costs and the friction. And so the overall goal here is clearly to maximize impact. Everything we want to do in education, everything of why we're committed to this sector, while we all have a passion for this area, is because we want to make a difference. And we can make a difference, and the difference can actually live on in ways we can't even imagine, which is really exciting when we are able to free ourselves and kind of use this new innovation and technology of open educational resources, which allows downwind innovations to be built on what we begin as a creator. So that's really, really important. And so this
we have about 2 minutes left in this segment, so I guess I'll let both of you know.
And so just going back to this, one of the important pieces is open educational resources. We can put materials out there. We can collect data on student learning and teacher use. We can use that data to refine our theory. We can then improve the open educational resource, and we can continue this cycle of improvement, which is critically important to refine for students and for best practices. So I'll leave it with that.
Oh, Kathy, if you could do a quick one. You had planned on moving in this direction, but a lot of people have questions on how do I get access to OER repositories, information, content, how do we license some of this content? I know College Open textbooks, I'll put that link in the question, is one place people can go, but maybe you could finish with that answer.
Great. So how do you license OER materials? You use the Creative Commons license. The quickest way I'll say right now is that you can go to our website, and there's instructions and frequently asked questions. If you have any problems, there's helplines. We have technical assistance to help you do it. But for the quick overview, again, you can go to the license, and what you do is you go through a very easy readable set of questions, and you say yes or no. Do you want to allow commercial uses? Do you want to allow modifications of your work? And you, as the creator, can choose to do that. There are 3 levels of our licenses. One is a machine readable. When you add this metadata, this tag, essentially, this HTML tag to your content, the machines can read it, the search engine, which makes it very important because other people can find your assets, other people can use it, and you can find it in the search through Google, through Bing, through Yahoo. The deeds are also human readable, so those of us who are not lawyers, including myself in that group, very clear on what we're choosing and why we're choosing. And then there's also a legal code, which if you have general counsels or counsels who want to look at this before you make a decision, whether you're in a district or an organization, they can look at the fine print, and essentially those three pieces work together. And then just this last slide is just kind of showing over time the increase in the movement, kind of the demand that we're seeing, the take-up. In closing, I think we're just at an incredible time in the field. People are seeing the potential of openness to really have a multiplier effect. And in this period of innovation, in this period of the digital age, we really need to be building on that as well.
Well, we actually are at the end of this segment. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Mitchell. There's a bunch of questions that I think we're going to have to hold that I think that, Kathy, you will be very important in responding to. But I want to hold that till the end. We should have 15 minutes at the end to deal with those kind of questions. In the meantime, let's move forward to the fact that we are going to now learn about, I'm having a bit of a problem here. There we go. Oh, I know what the problem is. Okay, I have to go find Kathy Swift and make her the presenter. Hold on a second, Kathy. You're coming up any moment.
Okay, I'm waiting.
Okay. This is supposed to be easier than this. Somehow or other my...
Well, let me, I think one of the first things that I was going to do was to introduce myself. We were asked to do that, so to save some time here until I do get control of it, I'll just tell you, I'm Kathy Swift, and my title is Director of Academic Partner Services for MERLOT. I've been in this position a little over 5 years. I work directly for Cal State University's Chancellor's Office, which is really the sustaining member of MERLOT. Prior to that, I was a faculty member at Georgia Southern University, so I've also been on the faculty side for about 15 years and understand what it takes to put a class together, etc. Okay, show my screen. I'm going to do that. Now, is my screen showing now, Steve?
Yes, it is.
Okay, super. Okay, that was the introduction. I just want to spend a few minutes telling you a little bit about MERLOT, and in next month's session, we'll elaborate a little bit more. But I think looking at the MERLOT collection, I just want to tell you briefly what is unique about MERLOT. One of them is longevity. We have actually been around since 1997. I've personally been involved since 1998 when I was still a faculty member at the University System of Georgia. So MERLOT has been around for a long time. We really are an open educational resource. Our term, there are a lot of different definitions for OERs, and our definition is anything that is available for people to use for free that helps educate. And so that might not fit in with a lot of other definitions of OERs, but that's basically how we refer to it. MERLOT is in an interesting situation. We're not a repository, we are a referratory. And it operates just like Google. You can search MERLOT for materials to use in your classes, and we point to the resource just like Google does. We have all the metadata around it, so we can tell you what age group it's appropriate for. We can tell you what format it's in. We have peer reviews of it. We have member comments about it, but you actually go to the individual site. I always call MERLOT a Google for educators because instead of Googling DNA and finding millions of materials, you can Google it in MERLOT and find materials that are appropriate for teaching. I think one of the unique things about MERLOT is we peer review the materials. We have more materials than peer reviews, but we're slowly working through the collection. We're also across disciplines. Some repositories focus on maybe the sciences or medicine or something, but we are across all disciplines. We're also worldwide. We have users from around the world. Two of our new partners, one from Israel and one from Chile, are participating in MERLOT. We're multi-language. Because of our new partners, we have a lot of materials that are in other languages, but other people can submit them in multiple languages too. And we have a variety of materials. We have 19 different types of materials that include open courses, open books, but we also have even little animations that help students. We are at all levels of education. We primarily function for the university level, and that covers really technical schools all the way up to graduate schools. However, anyone can post materials to MERLOT, so we're finding we have a lot in the K-12 area also. I think a major thing that is unique about MERLOT is that we're funded by partners. We're not funded by grants. We'll occasionally get a grant in partnership with somebody, but we're primarily funded by our academic partners, and that's what's been able to sustain MERLOT. I have down here that we have 30,000 over 30,000 teaching and learning materials. I looked just as the session began, and it's at 30,396, and we have 96,203 members of MERLOT. This is just a picture of the home page of MERLOT, which may be a little bit confusing, but we have over here a browse area in which you can browse all the different topics. We also have an individual search area up here in which you can actually search for specific terms that you want. When I mention different types of materials, this is actually from the tab that says Learning Materials, the categories, but what I wanted to also point out are the material types. And these are broken down by those categories. For instance, we have over 2,000 open textbooks. We have let's see, online courses. There are 2,100 online courses, and some of them are just simple little animations that help illustrate something. I only have 5 minutes, so I kind of sped through that, but I really hope that you'll all follow up. This is our website. It's spelled just like the wine, only it's org at the end as opposed to com. And this is my email. The easiest to remember is Kathy@merlot.org. And I'd be glad to answer anybody's questions. Okay, my 5 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. There are some questions, but we're going to get to those as we end. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel at Connections, and you can talk about Connections, Daniel, and have 5 minutes to do that.
Great. Well, it looks like I have a little bit of work to do, since only 31% of you said that you have an idea of what Connections is, and only 10% have actually used Connections. So I'm Daniel Williamson. What was that?
Daniel, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, really?
Now, you should have a little note someplace that may be hidden behind something else.
I see it.
We see it, Steve.
Okay.
Oh, okay. My fault.
No problem.
Oh, I know what happened. It's my fault. Sorry about that.
Well, so my name is Daniel Williamson, and I'm actually a researcher at Rice University, and Rice University is the home of Connections. It was founded in 1999 by Rich Baranuk. He's a professor in electrical and computer engineering at Rice. And I kind of want to ask you all a question real quick. How many of you remember these? Obviously, these are LP records. And over the past 2 decades, there's been a pretty amazing transformation. We've had all this music that was on these analog discs be transformed into this digital content. And now we can have this entire stack of LPs all on these little iPods. And so one of the consequences, one of the fortunate consequences of having this content be digitized is it's created this environment where people are creating new content, they're sharing their content using the web, they're using this content freely, and they're also reusing it openly. Now we can kind of draw, I guess, a connection to, what is it, Napster? Does everybody remember that illegal thing, Napster, that got shut down? Well, Connections is kind of like that, except it's legal, thanks to the Creative Commons. So with open education, with Connections, we've sort of taken the books, freed them from their bindings, and allowed them to be create a free and open ecosystem where users can create, share, use freely, reuse openly all of this educational text that used to be locked up in these formal textbooks. So it's created this vibrant and interactive community of connected and innovative individuals We're creating up-to-date, efficient, and effective learning text. So as I said, Connections is a non-profit open education platform that was founded 12 years ago in 1999. Currently, we have over 1,100 open textbooks and courses, and these are all created from reusable Lego block modules, and currently we have about 18,000 of those modules. We have contributors from all over the world. There's content in many, many different languages. It's all free online. It's available for very low cost in print, and all of our content is available via the CC BY license, the Creative Commons Attributions license, which is one of the most open licenses you can choose. Currently, we receive about 2.2 million unique users a month, and that's from over 190 countries worldwide. So as I was saying, Connections has these content modules, and they're all based on XML. That's like the actual language that it's constructed. And what the fortunate thing about having it in XML is that we can have it in many different formats instantaneously. So as soon as you create your learning module on Connections, it's available as an EPUB or EPUB format for your iPad or your Kindle or any other e-reader. You can view it online. It can also be accessed using accessibility tools for people with disabilities. And also it's available in print and PDF. So here's just a quick look at what one of our most popular pieces of content is. This is collaborative statistics. It's been used over 2 million times to date. And you can see it here as a web page. You can see it as on the iPad and also the actual textbook, what it looks like. We have over 55 adoptions of this book in particular, and there are actually 6 customized versions. So people come along, they find the book, and they're like, oh, this is a great book. And thanks to the CC BY license and the connection system, individual instructors can come along and they can adopt it and edit it and improve it to meet their needs so they can make their own customized version. So just in closing, I guess the thing that really resonates with me and with Connections, and I think with all of OER, is that education is a public good and that knowledge should be shared. This is a quote that I heard from Hal Plotkin, who is the Senior Policy Advisor in the Office of the Undersecretary of Education, actually in Vietnam. And he gave this talk, and basically I think this resonates very well with this entire audience. So you can reach me at dcwill@rice.edu or cnx.org, excuse me, and I would love to hear your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, at this point, we're going to move on because we don't have the time to go to specific questions. So, Jackie, it's yours.
Okay, I'm bringing up my my PowerPoint now and saying show my screen, so I'm hoping you're seeing. So I've been the director of College Open Textbooks until last week. For the last 2.5 years, I followed in big footsteps of first Barbara Ilowski, who's the co-author of Collaborative Statistics, and Judy Baker, Dr. Judy Baker, here at Foothill College in California. My successor is Una Daly. She's also here at Foothill College. Our project is moving from Foothill de Anza down to the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. And when I say down, I mean down in San Jose as opposed to Los Altos. So the College Open Textbooks organization is a collaborative of about 17 for-profits, educational, and nonprofit organizations, including many that have been mentioned today. MERLOT, Connections, SoftChalk, Flat World Knowledge, Happy About, and many others. And we're, like MERLOT, we're a referratory. We do not have any particular books of our own. We don't hold materials on our website, but we do point to 700 open textbooks, or nearly 700 open textbooks, that are appropriate for community colleges. Our mandate is to get community college faculty to adopt open textbooks. And it's more difficult than you might think, so it's definitely a marketing phenomenon. And so to do that, we first find them, and about half of our textbooks are on major repositories like Orange Grove and Flat World Knowledge and Open Learn and Connections, but the other half are on sort of one book per website, and so it'd be a lot harder for you to find them without our assistance. So we get peer reviews done. We also have accessibility reviews done, and I'm going to show these in a minute. We also have a blog with lots of great posts from all over the country and Canada and even some international ones. And then we also have a community, and we hope you'll all join our community as well. So this is the main page of the collegeopentextbooks.org website. Over here on the right, you see news and events, and this jumps you to our blog. So you can see right now this webinar series. We blogged about this last week. We just had a professor in the southeast part of the United States has a tool for students to help contribute to OER and so on. On the right, on the left, you see our menus, and these are pull rights on the actual website. When you come to Open Textbook Content, you would pull right to find the actual books, the peer reviews, and the accessibility reviews. So this is an example of one of our textbook pages. We do them by discipline, so this particular page is about art. And we list a textbook, and if you were to click on this textbook title, you would go to the website where that textbook is housed. Sometimes you would actually go to the PDF itself. And you'll see in red we indicate what license that particular textbook has. Most of our licenses are Creative Commons, but we also include public domain. Some people, especially in computer science and business, use software open licenses and so on, and that will be indicated there. And we also indicate with an asterisk if we've done a peer review or if we've had a peer review done of that book. So you can see the asterisk. And then if our peer reviewer didn't like the book and says it's not recommended, usually that means not recommended at this time, it may get better, then we show an NR. This is an example of a peer review page. Now, unlike the commercial publishers, we do not hide who our peer reviewers are. So the author and the textbook, and again, you can jump to the textbook, are listed, and then the reviewer and what his or her affiliation is. And we have a separate page that gives you more information about each reviewer as well as a logo for their college or company. We developed 11 criteria, and each reviewer fills out an elaborate spreadsheet. And each chapter is rated on each of these 11 criteria on a scale of 0 to 5. And then our reviewer manager condenses the many, many comments from the reviewer. If you want to see more, just contact us and we'll send you the whole spreadsheet.
About 1 minute, Jackie.
Okay, now this is a peer review. And I'm sorry, an accessibility review. We've had 2 companies, Knowbility and Virtual Ability, who've done a total of 100 peer reviews using the the Section 508 of the Rehab Act and also the World Wide Web Consortium criteria for making sure that textbooks can be used by text-to-speech readers, that similarly they can be used for people who have hearing disabilities and so on. So that's the story. This is how to contact us, and we welcome your questions, your phone calls, and be happy. And again, I want to thank Steve and SoftChalk for allowing us to participate in this event.
Well, thank you, Jackie, and thank you, everyone. So now it's my turn. So I'm going to see if I can put my screen on, and in just a couple minutes, there's 2 parts of SoftChalk. We've had the traditional SoftChalk authoring tool that's been around for about 8 years, and it's a desktop application, and we'll talk more about that in the 3rd webinar, which has to do with how to create OERs. But our claim to fame, in a way, is the fact that we are trying to make the OER content that it's created to be very interactive. And you'll see examples as we go on. SoftChalk Connect is our digital learning object repository. We're trying to create a community of folks sharing content. The unique part is it's all SoftChalk created content. And you can put it into SoftChalk Connect, and then you can bring it out. We use Creative Commons licensing as a way of making it possible to share the information. And we actually work with MERLOT as well. MERLOT commented that they were referratory with SoftChalk. If you create a SoftChalk lesson or course, then you can publish it to MERLOT, and then put it in SoftChalk Connect, and they'll point to one another. So that's, if you need a place to put content for MERLOT, that's one of the things to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you to SoftChalk Connect. Let me go to the home page. You notice you can get a free account. And I just want to make a point that there's a lot available here. We have lessons. We have learning activities. We have courses. And I think the easiest thing to do is so that we can search. And let me do an advanced search. And if you look, see all the ways we can search. But there's learning objects, quiz groups, lessons, and courses. And I think the easiest thing for me to do is simply do a search for anatomy, because I know there's a lot of content out there. And just show you, there's a hotspot rollover. This is something I created. Let me show you what it looks like. SoftChalk has about 20 different learning activities. They're a little bit like, there's a hotspot, so it says you roll over and it starts to find parts of the eye. The important part of this is that you can make this available in several ways. You can get the embed code and embed it in not only a SoftChalk lesson, but an email or a web page. You can get a hyperlink and link directly to this object. If you are a SoftChalk user, you can actually go in and take it and repurpose it, make it your own. If you have an entire lesson, and this is something else, eye anatomy. And anybody who's seen me do a demo, this is the entire lesson. It's multiple pages. You can get the embed code and embed this into your content. You can get a hyperlink and link directly to this lesson, and it won't be buried inside of this frame. And with version 7, which is coming out later this month, you'll be able to actually get the code, the file, the folder that is this lesson, and then with SoftChalk you can repurpose it as well. So we're trying to make really reusable learning objects that you can take from SoftChalk Connect and modify and make them your own. Time is more than up, so Mitchell, have you been sort of looking at the screen? Do you have questions that you can prioritize and put forth?
Prioritization is a good one. I think there were two that were high on my list. One was, and this is for Kathy Casserly, if you could talk a little bit more about the Utah high school and just give the name and talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. So Utah Open High School is the first high school in the nation. It was it was begun by David Wiley, who is a professor in Utah who has been an early advocate and champion for open educational resources. So essentially they took and scoured the available open educational resources that existed and that was appropriate. Starting in the high school, they started with 9th grade and have added 10th and 11th grade, so they've been building the curriculum. And the goal is to build a full curriculum, a full open curriculum, which then others would be able to use and actually replicate in other states as well. So this is very interesting, and then again, it's a new innovation. It's a school that uses materials that are only open, and then it actually uses and makes available student work, obviously stripping student identifiers, but also using student work as exemplars of best practices. We know that's a type of framework that is often used, and rubrics that are often used and available for others to duplicate. So what's really interesting is that they've been able to kind of break into this innovation space and provide an exemplar. And there has been huge take-up and interest as well, and again, proven effectiveness with respect to the learning outcomes.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. One of the questions that folks had, Steve, you just answered by putting up the list of everyone's name. So if you look on the list now, you can see everyone's name, their email addresses, and organizations. One question that people had is where can they get access to the slides? And I think you sent an email with a link to that, but can you talk about that?
Who are you asking that question of?
Oh, this is to you, Steve. If you could talk about the slides where people can get access to the slides that were presented.
Well, I don't know where they are, frankly. I haven't even thought to ask that. I know that this entire session is going to be recorded, so you can go back and you'll get an email tomorrow telling you where the archive is. As far as the slides are concerned, I don't know whether people will make them available. You have, at this point, this is my suggestion, rather than trying to sort of centrally organize this and maybe make it a bit chaotic, is that if there are slides from those individuals that you want, would it be all right just simply to send an email to each of you and say, I would like a copy of your slides, and you can send them or not, depending on whether you want to share them or not.
That sounds like a good plan. But also, when you get a chance to look at the review of the session tomorrow, all the slides you'll see, you can actually see it as part of the overview and we going through here.
Right. Exactly.
There was one open question, and we could ask this to everyone, and you know, we could walk through the list top to bottom, or maybe Stephen, why don't we do bottom to top? And David Porter asked this question or made a comment. And is the proliferation of OER a supply side issue or a demand side issue? And so, you know, I think everyone will have a slightly different answer. And looking at the list, Steve, why don't we start with you, and then we'll walk back up from there, and then Daniel, Kathy, Jackie. You know, quick comment: is the proliferation of OER supply side or demand side?
I don't know how to differentiate in terms of where it all began, but I think they're converging. There are people with great passion about creating OER for reasons that, you know, we've talked about today, and I think that is an important part of what is going on. But beyond that, I'm going to pass.
All right. Hey, Daniel, do you have an opinion?
Sure. I would say it's probably a mix of both, just like Steve was saying. My feeling is that we are reaching a point where education is not sustainable with the current resources that are available. If you think about it, and probably Jackie can answer this better than me, community colleges specifically, often the cost of textbooks for a semester outweighs the cost of the actual tuition. And so the demand for quality, openly available educational materials is incredibly great.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. Hey, Kathy Swift, do you have a thought on that?
Sure. I kind of agree with what Daniel said, but I think it depends. As far as textbooks go, I think the cost of textbooks has really been driving the whole open textbook projects, you know, several of them. I also think that there's a demand for high quality materials. There's a lot of material out on the web, but finding the material that people can actually use in their classes is difficult. So people have a hard time finding materials, and I think we've got to change the mentality of a lot of faculty who have been very hands-off my stuff oriented to the idea of sharing it and sharing it with the world, basically.
Absolutely. So, by the way, every answer is right, both right and so it's interesting because there are many issues. How about you, Jackie? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to say I think the demand side is the weak chain at this time. Of course, it depends on your subject. If you're in business, computer science, math, there's lots of resources. Some of them more, some of the other subjects, there's not as much available. But our whole structure of how, first of all, instructors are very, very overworked, and choosing new resources is a big strain. But we are finding, statistics are showing, the Open Courseware Consortium is that these resources are not being used. They're being put up there by prestigious universities. And we've assumed for a while that, well, they're not being used in the developed world, but they're being used in the developing world, but then we've discovered they're not even being used in the developing world. By self-learners, yes, but not by institutions. So we have to get to the point where the institutions are adopting and encouraging these resources to be used.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. You know, let me skip over me. I'll do the final one. Kathy Casserly, do you have a strong opinion on this?
I do. I think there's a few points. One is that if you build it, will they come? That goes to the supply side, right? We have to build what the user wants, and so that's where the demand piece is really critical. We built supply models and pipelines early on, but we really have to understand what the demand is, because if we don't, it doesn't make necessarily sense. We're not using our time and resources efficiently. There's also a second point around not created here. In education, particularly in higher education, we have a cultural norm that I do not use what has not been created here. And we don't know that the efficacy of what gets created by each individual faculty is actually of the highest impact. But that's a norm that is very typical, and that's somewhat built by the incentive structures of our institutions of higher learning, built into tenure, built into publishing. And so there's a whole world and cultural norms that need to shift as we think about whether and how it gets used. And then lastly, there's an issue around search and discovery that was raised. How do faculty find the gems so that they can actually use something that's been created elsewhere, which is of a quality resource? And that actually has been a significant challenge for the open educational resources space. I do want to just add that there is now a project called the Learning Resources Metadata Initiative that Creative Commons is pulling together the technical working group for learning assets to create kind of the metadata schema for how search and discovery will work. And so it's a point in time when we have 3 search engines, Google, Bing, and Yahoo, willing to pick up the schema that gets contributed and devised. And so we're at a point in time, hopefully, when if we as a collective community use the same tagging structure that will be created by a collaborative working group, we have now the opportunity to kind of solve the search and discovery problem, which will then, I think, feed into some of the demand issues, because then the user, the end user who's in demand, can find exactly what they want readily.
Beautifully said. Thank you. And let me do it in 30 seconds, and then we could wrap up. But there's been a lot of phenomenal questions and chatter. You know, having spent 3 years working with college open textbooks, it really is both a supply and demand issue. And Kathy Casserly did a great job on the if you build it, they will come. They don't always come just because it's there, because you have to find it. And on the demand side, it's not just NIH, but it's also change, right? People have to change. Professors, faculty, users need to change how they use and interact information. And, you know, this will change over time. The landscape will be dramatically different 10 years from now, when you've got the kids who are being born and raised in Google, who are now actually teaching and running you know, educational institutions and faculty, so life will change automatically. I think this is a great question that should certainly take on more time and more bandwidth, Steve, and I think we could definitely cover this one again, supply and demand, and I'm excited about it. I think we're running close on time. There's been a lot of great questions on how do the commercial publishers get involved, what are their role. I think ancillary materials, to answer that question, is an important element on the demand side. What do you think, Steve? Do you have time for one more question, or did we hit the end?
Well, let me take a look. It is right now on the hour. Let's do one more question. But what I want to do, and let me say this now, is that there are 2 more currently scheduled in this series. The one in August is about searching, so you learn more about how to find the stuff. And the one in September is on creating. So you learn more about the tools for creating. There's been a lot of posts and Twitters and blog references, and SoftChalk is sending out emails. The information is on the SoftChalk website. So please feel free to go there and get additional information. And to finalize, yes, we're recording it. It'll be available probably by the end of the day. It'll be in the SoftChalk website. It'll also be included in the mail you'll get tomorrow. Having said that, let's do a question or 2.
So there are 2 sides of the questions. One is on the demand side. What is necessary? And Jackie, when you take a first stab at this, what is necessary for instructors, faculty members to actually want to adopt open textbooks? What are other things that are appropriate and necessary?
Well, I think first we have to emphasize that this isn't all about making the textbooks less expensive. Open textbooks have a huge advantage for the instructor because the instructor can typically make them fit the students better. They can rearrange the chapters, leave out chapters, change the British spellings to American spellings or vice versa, which is difficult to do with most commercial textbooks. So there's a benefit to the instructor as well. Now that said, the instructor still needs several weeks to redo their class. So we are looking at getting the institutions to give the teachers the time to do that.
You know, there was I agree, and like I said, that there's a lot of software companies out there that are doing, helping teachers with creating tests, we're creating ancillaries, we're creating modules to help them be more effective. I think, to make it the most current possible, one question that anyone who has an answer for, what do you think the Amazon, this is a question that came in, but what do you think the Amazon announcement of renting textbooks, how will that affect the industry and help things along? And that's a great last question to end up with.
Well, I'll stick my neck out. Rentals have been around for a long time now, but they don't solve the problems that open solves. And in particular, rentals disappear. So you've taken Chemistry 1 and now you're in Chemistry 2 and you no longer have access to your Chemistry 1 book. So I think rentals have to change to where there's more permanence.
Makes sense. Anyone else want to take a stab at that one?
This is Kathy Casserly. I mean, I think the rentals can't be carried on the iPad. You can't carry multiple books at one time. It can be really difficult. We know just the issues of textbooks and students in high school and colleges. I think we're just moving away from paper and resources for paper to build books. So I think we're moving to the digital age where we have these textbooks which are dynamic, which are no longer just print on the page, but have embedded assessments, have games, have additional learning objects, have chat rooms and student support. That's where the dynamic aspect of the open textbook is so exciting. And I think in some ways that can't compete with a rental book or a current version of the textbook because the world is changing, and I think you're right, the digital natives, the students who have been born with Google operate in the world very differently, and the world of paper will not exist for much longer.
That's a great answer with lots of things to think through, and I think, Steve, we definitely have gone over our allotted time.
Yes.
And
People
so
are leaving, so we probably should wind it up. I agree.
And I'd love to thank everyone who has actively spent the time putting their presentations together and making this happen. I thought it was a fantastic session, and thank you so much for your time. I'm certainly open, as well as anyone on the panel, to answer questions that you might have.
Yes. And contact information is on your screen, and if you want to get hold of any of these people, please, feel free to contact them, contact me with questions, and we also will be back in a month talking more about this information. Somebody talked about OER Commons in the Q&A, and OER Commons will be highlighted as part of the August session as well. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and I think we're going to close